Good morning, race fans. Welcome to another edition of... Wait, let me do this properly. We're so back. Viva! I know it's not Elvis, but close enough. This weekend we had the Formula 1 2025 Las Vegas Grand Prix, and admittedly, I expected better considering how many overtakes we've had in the past here, but it was still a good race with some really unexpected magic happening. So let's review what went down here at the Race Day Cafe. And I don't have coffee today, but I do have this solo cup type thing, which I feel like is fitting for Vegas. Much has been said and much has been memed about the Ferrari John Elkann situation, but I'll quickly say my piece, and my piece is, what the f***, John? Going after Hamilton is maybe slightly more understandable because he has not been performing well, even though that definitely has nothing to do with his engineer being garbage at his job. But Leclerc? The man who's given you 7 podiums in that shitbox? Like, I don't even like Leclerc, but John, turn on your location. I just want to talk. And in other news, Alpine's headquarters got broken into. Apparently 2 people broke in through a window and went into the offices of management and executives. All I'm gonna say is, the Louvre jokes are right there for people who are funnier than me. Practice was not especially indicative of anything, mostly because there was a red flag in FP2, and you'll never guess the reason for that. Another loose manhole cover. That's right, the thing that nearly unalives Carlos Sainz in 2023. Just one of the many perks you can get when your track is promoted by the actual FOM. Turns out the flash floods in Nevada did hit Vegas because Q1 opened with very much wet conditions, and all drivers on full wets. And as you can imagine, it was a chaos fest. Drivers were constantly having to abort their laps because they were just sliding all over the place or directly going off track limits. And as a result, basically everybody was like, Mom said it's my turn on pole position. But eventually Q1 shook down to Ollie Behrman hitting the wall, Alex Albon hitting the wall. I feel like we should baptize that the Wall of Williams. And Lewis Hamilton being literally P20 because he got confused and braked at the finish line even though he had time to do another lap. I still don't really know if this actually has anything to do with Adami, but I will somehow find a way to blame it on him. In Q2, the rain clears up, but the track is still a mess. Leclerc's engine fucking turns off at one point. Classic Ferrari BS. Even the engine is just like, I give up, man. And Piastri almost drops out of the session, but has a close save in P10. By Q3, the track is dry enough for inters, and Verstappen takes provisional pole, followed by Carlos Sainz? But then Norris takes pole position and humiliates everybody with his banger of a lap. So that basically means Big Sainz is in 3rd. Imagine having told any F1 fan that Williams was going to qualify in the top 3 twice in 2025. Like, I would have laughed in your face. But now let's get into the race. Right out the gate, Lando decides to defend the absolute hell out of Max. But it's not like it matters because right after doing that, he realizes the corner is right there. So he has no time to take it properly. He goes wide and Max says, "Thanks for that insight," and sweeps into the lead. I think David Coulthard put it best when he said, him. Lando Norris tried to play Max Verstappen at his own game. The problem is he doesn't know the rules of the game. That is so cold it burns, David. Anyway, Norris also gets passed by George Russell, and Oscar Piastri loses his place with both Racing Bulls after Liam Lawson locks up and makes contact with Piastri in turn 1, which earns them both an investigation. And Gabby Bortoleto rams into Lance Stroll, which causes Stroll's wing to fall off, and we get a VSC. Now, I'm not saying Gabby was trying to get revenge for Brazil, but I'm also not saying he wasn't. Either way, it doesn't really matter because Gabby shortly after retires the car. Also, Kimi Antonelli pits after just 2 laps on soft tires. Surely, this is a bad idea. Right? I need to shout out this incredible graphic that says, Max Verstappen can still win. Damn, even the FOM is like, dreaming is free. Piastri now gets within DRS of Hadjar for 5th place, but he has Leclerc behind him who's quote-unquote pushing like an animal, which is a thing, you can say. And by the way, the investigation of the Piastri-Lawson incident ended up in no further action. Eventually, Leclerc passes Piastri, and it's almost barely an inconvenience. Meanwhile, Alex Albon is fighting demons with Hamilton, and Alex ends up hitting Lewis and breaking his front wing, and for a while, we're all just sitting there staring at the debris on the track like, so is the FIA gonna do nothing, or... But then finally, we do get another VSC. And while that happens, Kimi Antonelli gets bonked in the head with a 5-second penalty for a false start. Well, allegedly, because is the false start in the room with us. By the way, I have a question for you. How do we feel about the new penalty graphic? Like, I think it looks nice, but I don't really want them to get rid of the old one, you know? Like, it's too iconic. The VSC ends, and of course, Fernando Alonso pits right after it ends. Classic lucky strike for Magic. The mediums are starting to drop off by now, so the pit stops are starting, and Russell is the first one to go for it, leaving Lando Norris with clean air to try to get to Max. By the way, everyone at the front is on mediums, which basically means there's gonna be no strategy diversity. Again, so much for the tolerant left. At this point, the FIA has a chokehold on Alex Albon as they investigate him both for a collision with Hamilton and for a race start procedure infringement, which I definitely know what that means. Like, that is not vague at all. And finally, he gets a 5-second penalty for the collision with Hamilton, but for the other thing, he basically just gets a sternly worded letter. Hey Alex, don't do that again. Thanks. Anyway, Piastri pits, Sainz pits, and then Leclerc pits, but he comes out behind Piastri. And at one point, Sainz and Leclerc have a little battle, which gave me flashbacks of Vegas 2024. Like, remember that drama they had? That was crazy. That was truly like a Papaya Rules moment. Or Rosso Corsa rules? I don't know. Now everyone who's ahead of Piastri and Leclerc is starting to go into the pits, so that's helping Piastri and Leclerc move up. Except a stubborn Kimi Antonelli, but oh well, nothing to worry about. I'm sure he will pit soon. Back in the midfield, we have a battle for 10th place between Alonso, Hamilton, and Ollie Behrman. And the commentators really said that they have 9 world titles between them. I mean, it's true, but that's being so generous to Behrman. Though eventually Behrman does pass Alonso, so he said, I do not gaff about your 9 titles, get out of my way. Now McLaren tell Lando on the radio to go after Max, which is basically like activating the Winter Soldier, because he starts pulling several tenths a lap on George Russell, and he eventually passes him. By the way, did you know that Lando and George have exactly 150 races in Formula 1 each? What a coincidence, no? Anyway, now Max is pushing as well because he's starting to hear the Jaws theme right behind him. And Alex Albon pulls a 4D chess move by going into the pits, serving his penalty, and immediately retiring from the race. 10 out of 10, no notes. Piastri finally gets within DRS of Antonelli, but guess who's also there? Charles the Animal Leclerc. And these three battle it out for basically the rest of the race. And apparently in that moment, Zach Brown went to get a coffee or something. Man's not beating the favoring Lando allegations. But anyway, Kimi is on really old tires, so I'm sure that Oscar will have no problem getting past. Oh, he puts on the perfect defense? Damn. Okay, Kimi, I was not familiar with your game. Eventually, after like 10 laps of that, Piastri and Leclerc just kind of give up, and it's clear that Kimi's not going to pit despite having a 5-second penalty, which is insane. So now we're 2 laps away from the end, and it turns out Lando is having a fuel issue, so instead of gaining on Max, he's actually dropping massively. So of course George Russell behind him starts to push like crazy, and eventually he ends up gaining like 8 seconds on him. Holy shit. But unfortunately, he's not able to catch up. So, what Verstappen's in Vegas stays in Vegas. Lando Norris is second, and George Russell is third. And they get driven to the podium by Terry Crews in a pink Lego Cadillac. There's a Disney-themed fountain show, you know, the typical Vegas shenanigans. And so the championship remains pretty much the same. Wait, hold on a second. So apparently Norris and Piastri have both been disqualified over excessive plank wear. Well, I think there's only one thing we can say to that. Max Verstappen. That was the race. Now let's talk about my superlatives. This week's ace of the race is Andrea Kimi Antonelli. My man was absolutely robbed of driver of the day, so I'm here to do him justice. Y'all, he started P17. How the hell is that man on the podium? Someone please explain to me how on earth he did 48 laps on hard tires. That should not be possible. Clearly, we have another Pirelli moment on our hands. But I guess if you think about it, Kimi could be the ultimate tire whisperer because he's Italian and Pirelli is Italian, so he can speak to those tires in their language. Ciao pneumatici, per favore, non degradini, pizza pasta, grazie mille, espresso macchiato. As you can see, I have a C2 level in Italian, obviously. Anyway, historic performance for the rookie. His defense on Oscar Piastri was also masterful. wonderful. And I'm glad that the DSQ at least got him into the podium because I think it was well deserved. My honorable mention for ace of the race is Max Verstappen. Simply lovely that! Not that I doubted that Max could win here, but the overtake on Norris was classy as per usual. And yeah, he drove a great race, was not intimidated by Norris or Russell very much at all, earned his 69th win, nice, and most importantly, he's kept himself in the title fight, even without that DSQ, although that obviously helps massively. I honestly never thought that I would be rooting for Verstappen to win this, but clearly Oscar's not gonna do it now, and frankly, the thought of Lando winning is really upsetting to me, so I'm officially asking the Orange Army to please adopt me temporarily.
We zijn zo terug.
This week's disgrace of the race is gonna be both Piastri and Norris. I'm just gonna lump them in together, I think. Obviously, the DSQ was a little bit out of their control, especially when it was over, like, the thickness of a piece of paper, but I still wouldn't say that they drove great races today. Like, despite Lando obviously being at the peak of his career, he continues to prove my point that I don't think he really knows how to defend against Max. We saw it all the time last year, and clearly today it didn't go as planned either. I just feel like that's the one thing Lando really needs to lock down if he wants to be considered one of the greatest. And Oscar, I don't really even know what to say anymore. My man, how have you managed to bottle this championship so bad? I thought Mark Webber would help, but I think he might actually be cursing Oscar. I think I woke up feeling like a McLaren hater today, but I don't know, they're all starting to really get on my nerves now, you know? My honorable mention for disgrace of the race is Ferrari. This team is genuinely beyond redemption at this point. How on earth did the team not tell Leclerc to push to be within the 5 seconds of Antonelli? He literally missed it by 1/10 of a second. And with Piastri and Norris's DSQ, he could have been on the podium right now. Ferrari fumbling the bag as always, literally what's new. This week's strategy masterclass obviously goes to Mercedes. I don't think they were planning to pit Kimi on lap 2, but they clearly saw an opportunity with the VSC, and somehow it still worked. Again, how Kimi had that pace with such old tires is completely beyond me. But also, even if Kimi did need to pit, he was in a pretty good position to do so, because toward the end of the race, there was a pretty big gap between Sainz and Hadjar, where he could have pit and come out 8th. So his race would have still been pretty decent. Very nice job, Mercedes. And also, before I forget, congrats to my girl Dorianne for being the F1 Academy champion. This week's underdog shoutout goes to Carlos Sainz. I mean, first of all, that quali was absolute cinema, but we all knew going into the race it was pretty unlikely for the Williams to be anywhere at all. And yeah, he did get passed by Piastri and Leclerc, but he managed to hang on to P7, and with the DSQ he ended up going up to P5 and bagging 10 points. Objectively, yeah, not the greatest drive in history, but I'm just happy to see him up there, okay? Sue me. For my favorite team radio, I'm Pushing Like an Animal was definitely a close contender, but ultimately I've gone for Lando Norris saying, oh, whatever I gotta do, blah blah, and his engineer just responds, just do more. Just do more. Don't know what to do in a situation? Just do more. That was a must be the water level comment. Let's add that to the words of wisdom. For my best moment of the weekend, I mean, the fact that the 3-way championship is still on, let's go. Well, technically, I don't think Piastri will be in the fight for that much longer, but Qatar has always been good for him, so that will be my last hope. Last time out, things seemed so bleak, but now it's all to play for, baby. I'm just praying it goes down to Abu Dhabi, like, that's all I want in life right now. The worst moment of the weekend was the general Vegas shenanigans. Like, yeah, in theory, it's cool to have a Vegas Grand Prix, like, the idea is cool, but in practice, every time we get here, I remember how much I actually hate it. Everything is just so over the top and so performative, plus, like, the track is a major accident waiting to happen, but the FIA conveniently sweeps it all under the rug. We're obviously gonna have to deal with this track for the foreseeable future, but I just don't really love it, you know? I mean, what's next? An elevated turn 1 and they'll put a Six Flags next to the track? Oh. I guess that is what's next. My overall rating is gonna be 3 out of 5 stars. It gets a pass, but there was no strategy diversity and also not as many overtakes as we've come to expect from Vegas now. And as for the year-long prediction bingo, obviously there was nothing new to add. So I think we're just gonna move on and ignore how bad I am at making predictions. But what did you think of the Las Vegas Grand Prix? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And I will see you all next weekend in the Qatar Grand Prix. Stay fueled and make sure to catch up on sleep tonight, because after this race, I'm sure a lot of you need to. Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen.